Howdy, this is Constitutional Clayton, and today I want to expose something to you. John McCain is trying to undo what the War Powers Act of 1973 established, and really the Constitution established. Now, to explain what this is to you, I'm going to go to Wiki, and I'm going to read from Wikipedia. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution, sometimes referred to as the War Powers Clause, vests in the Congress the power to declare war with the following wording. The Congress shall have the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. Now, a number of wars have been declared under the United States Constitution, although there is some controversy as to the exact number, as the Constitution does not specify the form of such a declaration. So, since they were getting around that, we established the War Powers Act of 1973, which is a federal law intended to check the President's power to commit the United States to an armed conflict without the consent of Congress. The resolution was adopted in the form of a United States Congress joint resolution, and this provides that the President can send U.S. armed forces into action abroad only by the declaration of war by Congress, statutory authorization, or in case of a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, its territories, or possessions, or its armed forces. The War Powers Resolution requires the President to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing armed forces to military action and forbids armed forces from remaining for more than 60 days with a further 30-day withdrawal period without an authorization of use of military force or a declaration of war. The resolution was passed by 2/3 of the Congress, overriding a presidential veto. It has been alleged that the War Powers Resolution has been violated in the past, like, for example, by President Clinton in 1999 during the bombing campaign of Kosovo. All incidents have had congressional disapproval, but none had really any successful legal claims against the president for alleged violations. That is why we haven't declared war since World War II. We have had numerous operations that were not considered war, so they go around that fact. On declaring war in Syria, they came to the Congress and asked for approval and were denied. They couldn't even bring it up for a vote because they didn't want the numbers of no votes to, be shown publicly. So how did the establishment respond? The War Powers Act of 2014. And John McCain is trying to circumvent the Constitution with this act while claiming that the wording in the Constitution is unconstitutional. He wants to give the authority to declare war exclusively to the executive branch, knocking out the check and balance designed to keep us out of bad foreign policy and keep that power out of the hands of the executive branch. Sure, it is the president's job to lead us in times of war, but that does not give him the right to declare war. And that is a major reason for the separation of powers. We don't want anybody abusing that power, and it obviously has been. This is a legislative attack on our Congress, on our people, and really on the Republic itself. Now, I'm going to show you a video of him on the Senate floor bringing this legislation up. And try not to get sick as he talks about the separation of powers in our government is not working well for our military. And thanks to Sherry questioning all for the video.
Senator from Virginia being first, he's the sponsor of the bill of which I'm a co-sponsor. I thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased today to join my colleague, the junior senator from Virginia, as we introduce today the War Powers Consultation Act of 2014. This legislation is the final product of the National War Powers Commission, which was a bipartisan effort co-led by former Secretary of State Jim Baker and former Secretary of State Warren Christopher. The commission was set up by the Miller Center at the University of Virginia to devise a modern and workable war powers consultation mechanism for the executive and legislative branches. It included some of our nation's most distinguished and respected thinkers and practitioners of national security policy and law. In 2008, after more than a year of hard work, the Commission released the final product an actual legislative proposal to repeal and replace the War Powers Resolution of 1973, which no American president has ever accepted as constitutional. Like my colleague, I view our introduction to this legislation today as the start of an important congressional and national debate, not the final word in that debate. We want to pick up where the National War Powers Commission left off 6 years ago, and we do so fully understanding and hopeful that this legislation should be considered and debated and amended and improved through regular order. My colleague from Virginia has done a great job on this legislation, and I'm proud to join him. I'd like to expand a bit why updating the War Powers Resolution is such a worthwhile endeavor for the Senate to consider right now. My friends, the Constitution gives the power to declare war to the Congress, but Congress has not formally declared war since June of 1942, even though our nation has been involved in dozens of military actions of one scale or another since that time. There is reason for this. The nature of war is changing. It's increasingly unlikely that the combat operations that our nation will be involved in will resemble those of World War II, where the standing armies and navies of nation-states squared off against those of rival nation-states on clearly defined fields of battle. Rather, the conflicts in which increasingly we find ourselves and for which we must prepare will be murkier, harder to reconcile with the traditional notions of warfare. They may be more limited in their objectives, their scope, and their duration, and they likely will not conclude with a formal surrender ceremony on the deck of a battleship. The challenge for all of us serving in Congress is this: how do we reconcile the changing nature of war with Congress's proper role in the declaration of war? It's not exactly a new question, but it is a profound one. For unless we in Congress are prepared to cede our constitutional authority over matters of war to the executive, we need a more workable arrangement for consultation and decision-making between the executive and legislative branches. We have seen several manifestations of this challenge.
To make it short, what John McCain is saying is, we get our orders from NATO or other international bodies, and we don't want to have to clear those orders with Congress. We want to be able to act without congressional approval, without any kind of check and balance, because, you know, that check on the war powers, it really is damaging our ability to go fight whatever war we want to. I mean, there's actually restrictions on us whenever you put a check and balance on us, and we don't like that. We don't like it at all. Now, here's a video of Leon Panetta actually admitting that we get our orders from a foreign body.
Do you think that you can act without Congress and initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
You know, again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Well, I'm almost breathless about that, because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and then we'll come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American?
The United States Constitution reads, "We the people," not "we the executive branch of the United States." It is our decision to go to war, not the president's. This is our military, not theirs.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
I don't think it will pass through Congress, but if it does, you know Obama will sign it into law. Keep this in mind and show those who are skeptical what is really going on with John McCain. Like a magician's trick, once you see how the trick works and is performed, you will never be fooled by it again. Share this video and help me expose John McCain. My friends, when you get it, you can prepare for it. Until then, listen in.